That's new.
Yeah.
Mary, all yours.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Let me just take a quick look. Yeah, so we know that we have 2 members who are not attending today, and so that would leave us 7. We have 6 on the screen as Jen is just connecting, so I'll call the meeting to order in just a moment, give Jen a chance to get on. Jen, are you there?
Mary, yes, Mary, I'm here now.
Thank you. All right, so I'll call to order this meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee on May 25th. We have a quorum present. Before we get started, let me read the script. For this meeting, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is convening by video conference by the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or who acts inappropriately. I am Mary Longacre, Chair of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. To get started, I'll confirm that members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Sarah Boyce?
Here.
Peter Brace?
Here.
Matt Fee?
Here.
Jen Carberg?
Here.
Thank you, Jen. Fritz McClure?
Here.
Okay, and we know we have 2 members, Gary Beller and Graham Dervich, who are not able to attend. And we have 1 member who may be joining us later or not, we don't know. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Vince Murphy?
Here.
And Holly Backus?
Present.
Thank you. And we have anticipated speakers on the agenda. We have Rachel Freeman from the Land Bank.
Here.
And we also have Claire Martin from Remain Nantucket.
Here.
And we may have members of the public who are speaking as well. So good morning. This open meeting of the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus in its current state of emergency. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. This order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. Time permitting, this meeting will feature public comment. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to share the screen. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. I also want to mention again that public comment can be submitted by email or other means to Vince Murphy in advance of the meeting to be read into the meeting if you're not able to attend in person. Before we move to the first item on the agenda, I will cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the list of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public who have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So, I don't know how many more times I may have to read that, but it's getting to be old hat. So we have some announcements related to coastal resilience. And just a reminder, if members of the committee are planning to attend any of the live events, please inform Vince Murphy so that we can track whether or not we need to post the meeting, post the event as a meeting with a quorum. The Nantucket Rotary Club invited Kim Rose to give a presentation on Nantucket's coastal resilience efforts at their meeting on April 29th, and also invited Holly Backus to give a presentation on the Resilient Nantucket project at their meeting on May 6th. Those meetings were not recorded, but Holly is here to provide a similar update on the Resilient Nantucket project, which she will do later. Also, Remain Nantucket Executive Director Cecil Barron Jensen was scheduled to give a food for thought presentation through the Nantucket Historical Association. That was on May 19th and was titled Nantucket Sea Level Rise in Our Future. Recordings are usually made available. I did check this morning. I do not see it yet, but I would expect to see it at some point on the NHA's website. Future event, the Envision Resilience Nantucket Challenge is having an event on June 2nd, and we will ask Claire Martin to give us an update on that event and that project coming up later on the agenda. We have the link for online registration available. Can I get just a quick show of hands among the committee members present? Is anybody planning to attend the live portion of that event on June 2nd? Sarah? Okay, so it doesn't look like we're going to have a quorum for that live event, Vince. I think we're fine there. Also note that the select board is soliciting was soliciting applications for an at-large member position for the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee. We did receive one application according to the select board packet. They will have the opportunity to speak to the board, I believe, tomorrow night at their meeting. So I'm glad to see that we potentially could have a new appointee to replace Graham Dervich, who is not continuing her term past the end of June. The application period is closed at this point, I believe. And then finally, we have the Coastal Resilience Plan Virtual Open House number 2 scheduled for June 24th. And Vince, do you want to say something about that right now? And then we'll go into the next agenda item, which is updates on the other projects.
Sure, thanks, Mary. Two simple things to say about this. First, I am going to be posting so that CRAC members will be attending. I'm sure we'll have quorum or close to it. We had quorum at the meeting in January, and just make sure that there's no issue there. Second, this is geared more towards looking at solutions and what policies and actions might be taken in the coastal zone around the island. So this will be some amount of ideas as being developed by Arcadis at the moment that have been mentioned or come up at previous meetings or open meetings or through the app or various sources like that. But there'll also be scope on the night to shape ideas and see how we can develop things as we move forward into the plan. I encourage all CRAC members to attend and give as much information, as much feedback. And there's also going to be post-meeting feedback as well, obviously. And that can go through me or directly to the consultants as CRAC members wish.
Thank you, Vince. And just to know, your email, vmurphy@nantucket-ma.gov, it's the easiest way to give feedback. So any comments or questions on the event announcements? We're always happy to include other events here that are free and open to the public. The more sharing we can do of information, the better. So seeing no comments, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is updates on related and concurrent coastal resilience projects. I'm thinking that this might be a regular feature of our meeting agenda, just to keep in touch with everything that is now going on in the world of coastal resilience on Nantucket. There are many projects. It's good to get an update when there is information available, but I don't anticipate that we would have a report on every project at every meeting. Vince, do you want to lead off with the Baxter Road Engineering Feasibility Assessment?
Sure, thanks, Mary. many people on this call, sorry, in this meeting already are aware that this is well in hand, and there's been a few meetings on this front already. CRAC attended along with the select board and town staff at one of the meetings, and other members other people I see present participated through their own interest groups. But for the general run of the project, there are 4 key tasks. There's the project kickoff and data review. That's largely complete. You can never say it's going to be ever completely finished because there's such an enormous amount of information on Baxter Road. The task 2 was about stakeholder engagement. Task 3 is about the alternatives analysis, and task 4 is the memorandum on pathways forward. So just to go over the first 3 tasks more than anything at the moment today. So the task 1, project kickoff and data review, we've had that largely completed. We ended up collecting an inordinate amount of data, to be quite frank about it. And I must also commend Coastal Conservancy for bringing extra data in along the way. They did a terrific job on reviewing the data on that front. We've got all the kickoffs and data review. So stakeholder engagement, that has also started. We've had the first round of it. We met with in group meetings initially with for want of better descriptions, the SBPF and other interest groups associated with them. What was it? March 23rd. Same day, later in the evening, we met with Coastal Conservancy, Land Council, and other associated groups to try and get that feedback. Then we met with the Select Board and CRAC on April 14th. We've also had small group discussions along the way to try and set up small group discussions to try and have a point of contact. So for the sake of argument, we tried to get 2 members from each side, so to speak, to see if they could represent and take information back to their groups. There's been a bit of a slowdown on that effort. Unfortunately, one of the people leading that effort had a bereavement in her family, so that's had to slow down a little bit. There has been engagement, and we've tried to get both sides on board and selecting members that could be the key individuals to go to and take information back. We're also looking at the second round of stakeholder engagement, and we're looking at the week of June 22nd for that. Everyone on either side can expect an invite to discussions that week. We're looking at dates still. I think the 22nd and 23rd are the more likely dates at the moment of June. By the way, just so everyone knows, June 24th would also then be the Coast Resilience Plan, so it would end up being a busy week for Arcadis, but they're 2 different teams and 2 different departments, so it only really impacts people such as myself who are engaged in both projects, or members of Coastal Conservancy who have an interest in both as well. Also some town staff, but I'm sure we'll all get by. So behind the scenes is kind of some of the more interesting part of it at the moment. Task 3, the alternatives analysis, has also begun. So they've begun development of the alternatives analysis matrix, and they're trying to put together something of a decision-making matrix. And they're kind of starting to use, remember the Surf Drive project from Falmouth? They're using that as an idea, as a bit of a model to see if they could come up with certain points or certain criteria that you move from one method to a next. They also began evaluation of impacts of alternatives for the cost and for the environment. So they're just trying to see, well, what makes sense, what makes financial sense, and what makes environmental sense. And this is all something that is going to be presented, hopefully, in the second round to each stakeholder group. Task 4, the memorandum on pathways forward. There's no action on that yet because that's final stage, and we're only just about 30-ish% of the way into the project at the moment, so that there's no need to even begin to look at what might be written yet. I also just want to address one thing. I have had conversations with various stakeholders over the last number of weeks and month or so. I just want to say quite openly, this is a project between the various stakeholder groups that is open with those groups, and the solutions will come from within those groups. Will everybody be happy with the outcome with this? No. Will there be some hope? I doubt anyone will be entirely pleased with it. In kind of a mediated circumstance like this, that's never the case. But this is an open process. Nothing is decided yet. Nobody knows which way this is going to go. Just have to be totally clear and open and have that in the public sphere. Nothing is decided. So the way that the project is going to move forward, and the way it is and has been structured, is that we effectively have these large group meetings and stakeholder meetings to try and understand what each side wants, and then try and find the compromises between that. That's where the solution is going to come from. So it's going to be effectively taken from the stakeholders and presented to everyone involved, and all the stakeholders, including the town and SBPF, Coastal Conservancy, Land Bank. Everyone is being listened to try and find the right way forward for this area. Just want to be totally open, and as frequently said to me, I am Switzerland in this. I am the neutral party trying to get the best outcome for everyone. So that's Baxter Road. Does anyone have any questions on that through the chair, should they wish?
Yes, we'll go ahead and open up to committee members. Matt, go ahead.
Oh, geez. I'm a wreck, sorry. My comment is similar to Vince's, is I've got the same sort of people, oh, we want this, we want that. It isn't just coming from us, it's also coming from Arcadis's expertise as to what the right, sort of what the right paths are, what the correct paths are, sort of in the short, medium, and long term, hopefully. So this isn't a done deal by any stretch of the imagination, as sort of both sides seem to think. So I'm with you, Vince, with the caveat that Arcadis may have things we haven't even thought of that are going to come up.
Thank you, Matt. Other committee member comments or questions? If none, then we'll also open up to the public for a brief comment or question. Not seeing anybody there. And again, I didn't mention before, you can send a chat message to me or to Vince to let us know that you want to speak. But this is a small group, so you can also just unmute yourself and let us know. That would be also acceptable. Vince, do you want to go ahead with the Sheep Pond Road access project?
Thank you, Mary. So this is still in progress as well. This is stuff has happened, and I'm just going to go over a very brief timeline and also give a bit of an update of where things stand and possible directions. So the corner of Sheep Pond Road was lost on February 2nd. You might remember a few days later at a CRAC meeting, I showed the results of that storm and put up a before and after picture from the night before and the day of. So residents were coming and going for a period of time through a private property that was facilitated by one of their neighbours, and that was wonderful. And they were able to get out onto I'm blanking on the name of the road, Head of Plains Road, and then access onto Massasoit Bridge and come and go as they please that way. Then there was a temporary access was established around the last week of March across a 90-foot thereabouts, approximately 90-foot stretch of private property. This was done by the private property owner in that area in an effort to help his own neighbours effectively. Later, the town did additional works just to tidy it up and round a corner, that kind of thing. Now that's the kind of temporary easement, or sorry, temporary access that's in place down Head of Plains Road to get to Sheep Pond Road for the residents to come and go. So they can, and people can access for the summer. To call it a public access would be difficult at the moment because it does go across private property and private easements. So they're taking it in an ad hoc manner at the moment would be, I suppose, a polite way of putting it. But I understand that residents in that area are concerned that it might be excessively used by the public to access the beach and various things like that. And we're trying to look at ways to potential, not limited as such, but trying to reduce impacts over private ways. So now we're looking at the long term, now developing a plan with NCF on alternative long-term access for the area. We're working with Sheep Pond Road residents on ideas on what the new route might be. And we're also working with the idea to keep it out of flood zones and have the new route be as resilient as possible. So that's the idea and the ethos that we're approaching this with. Then there's another part of it that I simply have to say I'm not privy to. I am not part of the negotiation between the town admin and the NCF as to the route or the preferred route from NCF and what the deal might be for compensation, be it a land swap or cash or a combination thereof. That's just not something that I'm part of, but that will have to play a part in it. So we'll just have to wait on that. I don't wish to be pushing the onus back to NCF on that one, just to be perfectly clear. It's just something I don't know about. So this is going to hopefully come about in the next couple of months, or hopefully less than a year, would be what I would hope for, fingers crossed, but nothing I can promise, obviously. And then hopefully we will have access re-established from Old Sheep Pond Road in some form or another, or Red Barn Road. It's very hard to say at the moment because that is what's in development. So this access is in place and we're working on the long-term access.
Great, thank you, Vince. Fritz, a quick note for the minutes. Jen had to step out for about 5 minutes from 10:15 to 10:20, let's say, but we did maintain quorum with 5 people. Are there questions or comments from the committee members on the Sheep Pond Road access project? Okay, Matt, and then
just a quick comment. I think Sheep Pond is a good object lesson, I think, for us to keep in mind. It is, the state law requires us to provide the road, provide the access. It requires us to do takings if necessary and to compensate for that. Last time this happened, there was a lawsuit because the town was going to better all of these. And I'm with Vince. I have not been involved with the negotiations. I have not been involved on that end at all. But last time there was a lawsuit and the town ended up having to pay back pay back the cost. They were going to better it and they were not allowed to better it. And so, that's 140, 180,000. It wasn't a lot of money, but that, now take that and make that a tar road, make that a bigger tar road, make that an improved road with all sorts of stuff that has to be moved under it anywhere on the island, not just Baxter Road. And that is what we are dealing with, so some of this, it's great that we're looking at the long-term on this and maybe potentially moving it further away so we aren't in this situation again in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I think that's, Vince, that's a smart idea, but I am not privy to, to any of the negotiations or what is going on, as Vince said.
thank you, Matt. Peter, you wanted to comment as well.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the backup plan for this, when this road goes, whatever they come up with. I mean, 2003, September, that's when it washed out. That's what Matt's talking about. Then there was an arrangement with the Conservation Foundation to go across their land. And then, and so now here we are. So the ocean's going to keep coming. So is there, I don't know. I'm not part of the negotiations either, so I don't know. But you would think that there'd be I would hope that they're working on some solution that's going to be more permanent than, 18 years, I guess.
And I'll just make a quick note that, that kind of forward-looking analysis is probably something we want to make sure is in the coastal resilience plan.
Yeah.
So provide that feedback to Vince to send to Arcadis or directly if you want to. Jen, you had your hand up?
I did. Thank you, Mary. And I, just for the notes, I was probably only off for 30 seconds as I switched back and forth. So just to echo everyone else, even though I work for NCF, I'm also not privy to negotiations or, any kind of that information. and the specifics of where the road is going. You know, I have been asked to look at possible relocation points and think about erosion and coastal resilience and sea level rise to make sure that it's at least hopefully being placed in areas that are outside of, you know, the next 30, next 40 years. So those are at least being considered on this particular project. I do think going forward that this is one of the biggest things that we do need to think about if we are responding to an erosion event or a sea level rise event. Let's not just respond for the next 5 years. Let's make sure we're, you know, thinking about at least where we're going for the next, you know, 30 years as best as we can plan.
Vince with a comment?
Yeah, just a simple thing. I only briefly touched on it, but it's one of the other considerations. So yes, there's the erosion issue, but my secondary concern, not that it's secondary, but my other concern that I'm trying to understand as well, and what it might mean is Sheep Pond itself is a flood zone, and elements of that do come in contact with the existing Sheep Pond Road, and as sea levels increase in that area is going to flood more, or the water table is going to increase in that pond. What's going to be the impact on the current road and any new route that might go through NCF property? So there are two other things that I'm trying to take into consideration, not just look at the erosion for the area, but flooding is going to be a potential as well. We would like the road to be as usable as much as possible, but we already have roads in the downtown area that flood regularly and are unusable for a very small percentage of the time, but it does happen. So would that be an acceptable way forward for this road too? I think Jen had her hand up, Mary.
Yes, go ahead, Jen.
Just to respond to that real quick, Vince, that was one of the things we were looking at. So as best we can using the current models on Sheep Pond, and it's actually really interesting, just as a side note for thinking about these processes around the island. But if you use the sea level rise models, which, you know, are based on, you know, LIDAR and elevation and the mean high water, you don't actually get sea level rise on that area of the South Shore until about 2100 on the extreme, on the more extreme end. And that's because of the bank and because of how that area is structured. You know, if we erode back into Sheep Pond, that changes things and you're in a flooding zone. But before, at least the areas, at least the images that I saw for possible roads rerouting, before that floods, the other roads are flooding in the area and the houses are flooding. So, you know, there's definitely a time restraint for that area of the island, but it is more on that out in that, you know, 2080, 2100 range. At least by the models, you know, using the best information we have to go on right now.
Thank you, Jen. Any further comments or questions? And any member of the public that has a comment or question on this? Deanne, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mary. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I have two questions. One is, it seems to me that I recall Trevor asking us early in the planning process, what are our core community values? And one of those is beach access. And it would seem to me, as we're going through this process with Sheep Pond Road, this would be an excellent time to make sure we are negotiating for beach access. So that leads me to my second point. I'm a little concerned about who is doing the negotiating. I think of Matt as being on the select board as being so knowledgeable. I think of Vince as being so knowledgeable. You know, are there principles, are there coastal resilience principles that whoever is negotiating is considering? So we don't have a gap here between what you're all doing and Arcadis is doing and what's being negotiated over on the side. And then kind of the last, I think, really important consideration are the costs. So are the costs factored in? Are we negotiating for the least expensive alternative? You know, what are the expenses? What are the financial obligations on the taxpayers? I think these are just really mega questions that are being raised in the situation at Sheep Pond Road that we ought to think about as you said, Mary, sort of island-wide and as part of our coastal resiliency plan?
I think that is the goal. That those are good questions. I think that once we have the coastal resilience plan, we should have guidance from that plan in how to answer those questions. I don't know that any of us here today could answer them for you, unfortunately, but thank you for raising them, Deanne.
Mary, just one more thing.
Yes, go ahead.
I remember in the Arcadis proposal, there was a specific provision that said that during the course of the plan, which is about a year, there will be projects that come forward that need immediate attention. And wouldn't that be the sheep pond situation? Couldn't we benefit from involving the consultants in that issue right now instead of waiting 6 months?
Again, not something I have an answer for. I don't know if Matt or Vince wants to comment on that question. You're certainly welcome to. Vince?
Thank you, Mary. Something that might be worth exploring, but we've also kicked around the idea of arterial routes in the downtown area that might be explored for an individual project, areas that are high traffic, high volume, high usage, and are needed to come and go to the ferry terminals. So it's worth adding this to the mix, certainly, but when it's, forgive the bluntness, but for a small number of houses versus an arterial route in the downtown area, I don't know how that would work out, but you'd have to ask the question too.
Thank you.
And Matt, you wanted to comment?
You're muted, Matt.
Sorry. Yeah, very good questions, Deanne. I was thinking of the public access one, thinking maybe the public access is a, Conservation Foundation parking lot, a half mile, 3/4 mile from the beach. And so people, because we have friends there and,
Yes.
they're close to the edge, sort of it's coming quickly and all the vehicles down there cannot be helpful. Perhaps if there was a parking lot further away, the beach access would still occur there as it does. Number one. The other two questions are good ones. And I'm going to ask about, I'm going to ask about some of that tomorrow night. I've written it down.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt and Deanne. Did anybody else have a comment or question on Sheep Pond Road at this point? No. Okay, our next topic, Jen, did you have an update on the Trustees of Reservations and Nantucket Conservation Foundation project going on around the harbor?
Thank you, Mary. Not too much has honestly happened since the last time I presented it to the committee. This is the project where TTOR and NCF are partnering to look at Coscata, Co2, and the access through the haulover as far as particular resiliency issues, risk issues along the properties out there. And we have hired consultants with Woods Hole Group who are doing analysis. They did a site visit and are working on their analysis, and we're not really expecting that until later in the summer. The other piece I could update on is that we are planning on doing kind of some aerial drone footage that's going to look across the entire property and tie in with particular points of interest that are both, ecological and coastal resiliency, as well as a way of presenting the property and the issues it's facing to the public. So that's something that is in prep again for release later in the summer. Probably September-ish is really the time frame for most of this.
Great, thank you, Jen. Any quick questions or comments for Jen on that project, either from committee members or the public? Vince.
Just a very simple and small one. Obviously, Jen is a committee member, so it doesn't need to go too far, but anything that I can do or get from Arcadis for you that's of benefit to your project and increase the cooperation between them, I'm happy to facilitate.
Excellent, thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Vince and Jen. Next project is from Rachel Freeman, the Nantucket Islands Land Bank's Resilience Plan. Rachel?
Thank you, Mary. So we do actually have preliminary results of our risk analysis for the Washington Street area. Just to reiterate, we chose this area to start with a risk assessment and implementation case study for multiple reasons, which is interestingly enough dovetailing with some of the town's efforts as well. It's an area of concentrated risk. It does have present day impacts, and the land bank is one of the major landholders in the area. So it's been pretty exciting. I just got the data last night at 5 p.m. So I'm still diving into it and trying to figure it out. If anyone wants me to share anything today, I do have a couple quick looks at things like probability of inundations, depths of inundation, and mean high water. If today is not the great day, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Just to kind of summarize where we're headed with this, we are basically, we're doing the risk analysis and vulnerability analysis, which is going to tell us where the water is going to go. And similar to all the other projects that are working on this, we're looking at 2030, 2050, and 2070. Mean high water and nuisance flooding doesn't seem to really become a major issue in the Washington Street area until 2050, based on the data that we're looking at. But I think the term nuisance flooding is interesting because twice a day might not be considered a nuisance. It might be a more major issue. So we're now taking that information, and I'm in the process of really delving into it and starting to ask for more information about the model. And I don't know yet whether or not there's answers to these questions, or I don't completely understand them. It says 100% chance of flooding. Well, is there 150% chance? What 100% chance means it happens once, but how do I tell that it's happening one time or 30 times? Once you go over your 100% chance. So these are some of these questions that I'm looking at now. And once we have a grasp on that, we're going to begin to propose different nature-based solutions that could be components of public parks on land bank property, and then look at how effective those could be in resolving some of these flooding issues on Washington Street. And the Woods Hole group has been fantastic to work with, and I'm excited to present this information. And I know I'm talking with Vince and Mary on Friday, and we can review it in depth. I'll have a better idea. We actually have a long meeting with the Woods Hole group tomorrow to start taking a look at this. And really, this is just a case study also for the land bank. What's the potential for the land bank to do things on their properties that could positively impact coastal resilience for the island, and partner with the town and work on resolving some of these issues. So that is where we're at. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any comments or questions from committee members? Holly, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Rachel. As a planner, granted I have specialized in preservation, but as a planner, it's nice to see the land bank and NCF really work on this issue. Obviously, you all are blind to this, and I'm glad to hear of the collaboration, because the last thing obviously the entire island wants is kind of donut holes in what those choice solutions are going to be. So from an overall planning perspective, I'm really excited to see the work that everybody's doing. Thank you.
I have a comment. I'm not sure what's included in the definition of nuisance flooding in terms of how it affects people, not just that you can't drive because there's water on the street, but I've seen trucks take corners when there's water on the street and they produce a significant wake. And I know that on Washington Street, there are homes that are right on the street level, both as in, distance from the street, they're right up on it, and also distance above the street, they're not raised. So, even though a vehicle may choose to go through with water on the street, that has, knock-on effects to the buildings on the sides and possibly to other infrastructure. The pipes for water and sewer under the street, or electric cables, or I don't know what else. So that's something that I think is a really significant thing to look at. The other thing is, if you're driving a small car and there's water on the road and you have a boat reservation, you may not get to that boat reservation. That's something to consider, is that, for some people with a Ford F-150 truck, 3 or 4 inches of water might not be a big deal. For somebody driving a little tiny car, it might be a non-starter. You can't go. So that, I think we need to pay a little bit more attention to, what is the nuisance aspect of nuisance flooding, and how significant is it? So thank you for raising that, Rachel. Other comments or questions, either from the public or committee members, on Rachel's presentation? Seeing none, we'll go ahead, Holly, with the Resilient Nantucket Designs for Adaptation. You have an update on that for us.
Yes, thank you. So as you all are aware, this MVP action grant that we've had since early in 2019, obviously COVID has really taken a hit in the whole process, and we're very thankful to the state as well as our consultants working with us to get this going and going through the process. So right now, we're at the end of our action grant. It ends June 30th. And the Commonwealth really looked at Nantucket as a leader in this effort, creating design guidelines specifically for adaptation. I wanted to let you know that basically our grant process was with 3 different deliverables. If you remember, it came off of our resilient workshop that we did. Oh gosh, was that 2019 for MVP, where we came up and said, hey, we need a coastal resiliency coordinator. So of course we got Vince. Another thing was our HMP update. And then obviously the work that Resilient Nantucket came from, which was that 3D imagery that you see from Preservation Institute Nantucket and their Sea Level Rise project. The 3 deliverables that came out of this MVP action grant are the design guidelines, which the HDC will be having their pretty much last hurrah review of the design guidelines at their June 11th meeting, which is a Friday. Phil Thomason will be just talking to the HDC, make sure they're okay. And this is going to be pretty much the final time in case there's any other additional comments from obviously the commissioners and the public. But these design guidelines are really important moving forward, obviously. And then, of course, the toolkit. And you all were included in that toolkit presentation from Lisa Craig. I wanted to let you know that as of this morning, it is on the town's website. Florencia will be also pushing it on social media. Yes, thank you, Vince, for putting that in the queue. If I can share my screen, I just wanted to show you all what it looks like. Oh, sorry. I do this every day, you think I got this down pat. I do it for HTC. Oh, we'll be doing it tonight. All right, here we go. So here it is. You'll see, all how to get to the community resiliency page, where you see everything for the all the work that the town's working on. Resilient Nantucket, click on that. And this right here links you to the toolkit. This is what the announcement's gonna hold. But I really want you all to take a look at this. There's a lot of information. You all were great providers of information for this resiliency toolkit. Very easy to review. This will also be, as all planning documents are for the town and any jurisdiction, a living, breathing document. So obviously, when it comes to our coastal resiliency plan, one cool thing, as you know, that I'm very happy about is that Lisa Craig and her team are included within the Arcadis group as a co-consultant. And so she's a part of that. So there's going to be a lot of tie-in, but if there's any information that you all think would be beneficial from a FEMA, Commonwealth of Massachusetts at the local level, really down to the nitty-gritty on what do I do as an individual. All of these links have been checked and triple checked. But as we know, some organizations may change. So if there's anything that you see that is broken or needs to be added, we also have Nantucket Contacts. It's very, very important. But pretty much this is supposed to be at your fingertips for information of how do I become resilient. So I hope and encourage everybody to take a look at that. That's pretty much it. The 3 deliverables for the MVP Action Grant were the design guidelines, that toolkit, and the community charrettes and virtual, I guess, planning groups that we had. So if there's any questions, I'm here. And I wanted to thank you all for your participation specifically in that toolkit. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Holly. And I think you and the Lisa Craig group did an excellent job. Really, really great to have our first major effort be of such high quality. And hopefully the Coastal Resilience Plan will not lower the bar there.
I don't think it will. Thank you, Mary.
Any questions or comments from committee members on Holly's presentation for Resilient Nantucket? Or from members of the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Envision Resilience Nantucket Challenge with Claire Martin from Remain Nantucket. Claire, go ahead.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for having me today. We are really thrilled to be presenting the work of the 5 university design teams next Wednesday. The event will be in person, so it's an outdoor event that there's a lot of planning going into this first outdoor event kind of post COVID world. We're really thrilled with the work of the students. They've far exceeded any expectations we had going into this challenge, which is really exciting. And that is given that all of these students have yet to step foot on the island, which is very impressive. We were so thrilled with the way that they interacted, not only with our excellent advisory committee, but beyond that, reached out to engage with community members in a variety of fields, restaurant owners, fishermen, community members who are just landowners and, who are key stakeholders in the island. So we feel that the work truly represents the community values here and that they were really able to dive deep into the cultural history here, the geology here. And I think the community will be really excited by the work that they'll see next week. We had a really fantastic internal jury review in April. With some leading experts in the field. We had professionals like Ann Tate, Gary Hildebrand, Kate Orff of Scape Studio, who really reinforced and reiterated how thrilled they were with the work and how excited they were about this model that's kind of been created, where we bring together university teams, community members to really put together a toolkit that can hopefully inspire community members to think about the future under sea level rise. So the event is going to be featuring the professors. Each will give kind of a introduction to their process, their work. We'll have Wendy give some her remarks are recorded. Cecil will be speaking. We have Darius Coombs of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, who will also give a introduction, and I think a lot of folks know him. He's been with the NHA here before. He's fantastic, and he'll talk a little bit about connection to the land and the water here in Nantucket and the indigenous culture, and we'll do a land acknowledgement. And during the and then folks in the audience will have the chance to go around to 5 kiosks that have the university work displayed. So we'll have some really great renderings of the work, and a few of the groups have put together postcards, brochures, booklets that talk about their process, their research, and their final adaptive proposals. So that's really exciting. Some of them will also have video. We'll have 29 students here on island, along with all of the faculty members, which is really exciting. So that walk around bit during the event gives community members a chance to engage with them and ask questions. Students who can't be here will also be zoomed into each little kiosk. For the folks who are watching virtually, we're building out a web page that has the 25-minute jury presentations that were given internally in April. So folks can, spend time diving through that. A lot of them have given us slide decks to present, as well as those high resolution renderings of the work. So that's really exciting. Delaney Reynolds is fantastic. She's our youth climate activist keynote speaker. We're going to have the Nantucket Youth Climate Summit group introducing her at the event, which is a nice tie-in. And then after that, all of the work of the student teams is going to be exhibited in the Thomas Macy warehouse from late June through December. It's looking really fantastic up there, the space. We hope that will open. The plan is for that to open the week of June 21. Hoping to also host a few speakers and keynote or speakers and lecture series, maybe a few workshops as well, and would love to partner with any group here that is interested in doing so. I think specifically September with Acclimate's Climate Awareness Month, we'll have a whole series of events. So we're really looking forward to that, and hope that as many of you can join us in person on June 2nd. And we encourage that to be shared out. Thank you, Vince. I think he may have just shared the link, and I know it was in the agenda, but it's really exciting when we have the signups come in. A lot of it has just been through word of mouth, heard it from a neighbor. And that's really the whole idea of the challenge, was to have it be at that community level, talking to your neighbors, hearing about the experience of, so-and-so down the street, or your favorite business owner who has their, basement flooded every year. So that's the idea. And so please spread the word to anyone that you think would be interested in attending, either in person or virtually.
Thank you, Claire. I hope that you will be able also to help promote the virtual open house number 2, since it is at the end of June. You should have a couple of opportunities in a public setting. We would love to get that word out as well.
Yes, thank you, Mary. That is in Cecil's remarks, either at the beginning or the end of the event. And we'll also put that in our newsletter for this month as well.
Awesome, thank you. Questions or comments for Claire about the Envision Resilience Nantucket Challenge? Any questions from the public? Vince, you have a hand up?
Good luck.
And Deanne Etherton?
Yes, thank you, Mary. I just want to thank Claire. It was actually Remain's conference, Living on the Edge, maybe 12 years ago, that raised a lot of our collective awareness to what was about to happen to Nantucket. I also want to highly recommend the speaker series, which is online, and they're the recorded lectures that were given to the design teams and are available to the public. I just have learned so much watching those, and I know other people have too. So again, if you've got the time and can do it, it would be excellent. And thank you, Claire, for making those available to the public.
Thank you, and I'm really glad to hear that. Our team, we feel like we got a university graduate design course this semester listening to this series. So I just put it in the chat, and they are not just for Nantucket, but we hope that, I think the lectures hold a lot of value for other coastal communities as well. And this summer, we're really excited to see what happens after the event and the conversations that continue to happen in groups like this, but also in other coastal communities. And if there may be Envision Resilience Newport or Miami next, so stay tuned.
Right.
Thank you, Claire. I'll echo Deanne's recommendation for the speaker series. We did carry those links throughout our agendas this spring as the speaker series was ongoing, and I enjoyed them tremendously. Really neat. It's not just bringing together the university students and the local people, but also international experts in this topic. It's really great to have that level of connection. So that is the conclusion of our projects update. And so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a follow-up on the discussion from our last meeting, April 27th, which focused on the harbor. Vince, did we receive any additional comments from the public? I know there were several people invited to provide comments who were not able to attend.
No, we had nothing additional until I think it might have been yesterday when one person inquired if they could make a comment today or wanted to know about the meeting today. Not to put anyone on the spot, I think it was MJ Dixon, but if she wishes to speak, fair enough. If not, no pressure.
Okay, MJ, you have the floor if you have a comment you wanted to offer.
I just wanted to say thank you for all of your hard work. I'm here to listen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MJ. Any other comments or questions follow up to the harbor focused meeting? Again, I thought it was really great to hear many different perspectives around the harbor. I learned a lot from it, but I didn't know if anybody had reflected on it or had something they wanted to add. If there are no comments, we'll go on to the next topic on the agenda. Discussion review of the Coastal Resilience Plan efforts and work undertaken to date to provide feedback to the project team. So as noted later on the agenda, we do expect Trevor Johnson to attend our June 8th meeting. And Vince, I believe he's attending specifically to receive feedback. And so I wanted to make sure that people were aware of that in advance, had an opportunity to think about it. And we have several potential topics for discussion listed on the agenda. Vince, why don't you start?
Beg your pardon, Mary, just to clarify, he's attending to take feedback, but also to talk mainly about the June 24th event as well.
Okay.
Sorry, did you want me to take the part about the mid-project review, or do you want to take it yourself, Mary?
Why don't you talk about the mid-project review? And we also received the regular monthly monitoring report that was sent out after the agenda to members of the committee. So the committee members also have an opportunity to comment on that if they have anything to offer. Go ahead, Vince.
Thank you very much, Mary. So you might remember everyone had the opportunity to review and comment and give any feedback that was needed on the mid-project report. Some committee members did, and thank you all very much for that, or at least reading over it. Some people gave quite a substantial review and pointed out everything that they saw in it, and thank you very much to those that added to the quality. It's now on the town website as a draft. It is a draft. It's not finalized and won't be until it goes into the final report. Large sections of this will be edited and revisited and updated so that it can go into the final report that we'll need in September. In general, it turned out to be quite high quality. It gave me a bit of an eye opener for the areas that are at risk, and using the new MCFRM, Massachusetts Coastal Flood Risk Model data, using the latest and newest information we have was. I'm still trying to pick through it, to be honest. It was data heavy and it was intense to go through, particularly the appendices. If anyone has any further feedback, I'm still trying to collect anything anyone has so that we can get the final report as precise and as accurate as possible.
Great, thank you, Vince. Comments or questions? So I wanted to note in the next bullet point, the project team for the Coastal Resilience Plan has been very accessible to us, and I hope also to the public, and I really appreciate that. I noticed on the April monthly report, the overall project is 52% complete as of the end of April. Stakeholder engagement is 81% complete. And that's not surprising that that would have been a heavy focus at the beginning of the project. But I am a little concerned that while the team has been available and forthcoming and presented a lot of tools and opportunities to the community, there hasn't been a lot of more generalized outreach. There hasn't been use of the app that was offered to us. There's nothing coming from the project team going into the app. There hasn't been very much use of the email blast that's available to us. There hasn't been a lot put on the town website. So there hasn't been advertising. So I'm disappointed and worried that we're missing the opportunity to engage the public. And that is something that I would hope would pick up in the remaining 20% of their time that they have for stakeholder engagement. But it's something that I put a very high priority on, and also that the proposal indicated was a very high priority for the town. I'd be happy to hear other people's impressions or comments on that. Sarah?
Hi, Mary. Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up, Mary, because I kind of had that impression and was wondering if it was just my own and I hadn't seen some of the maybe public outreach or advertising, as you say. And I think, we've all been trying to do through our different avenues, such as this meeting and the other committees people are on, about highlighting the June meeting. And I think that there was great turnout for that. Can't remember when it was now, the initial public group meeting. And as we discussed after that meeting, there was a great number of people, and everyone that was on it participated kind of heavily, but it was, I hate to say, a lot of it was preaching to the choir, where a lot of people self-selected to be there. And so that was, I think all of us, we talked about it at some point. Thank you, January 28th, Vince. I think we talked about the fact that that was a great initial start, but then from that initial like core group or people that were really engaged, how do we you know, move forward? And we brainstorm some ideas, but I agree with you, Mary. I would love to see, you know, we can all do what we can as a group, but I think I thought that would be part of Arcadis's work, was to do a lot of that. We even, remember we talked about, you know, daybreak advertising to newspapers and all the things that the town already does and other ways to engage communities. And I think I was a little concerned with anytime we brought that up with the group, it was talking about the meeting in a box. I think that's one solution, but I would really like to see, not everyone responds to that, right? So I think we know our community best, not just the crack community, but the people that live here know the community best. I think that if we can nudge them, or I don't know what the proper channel is, but I agree that getting more outreach. I am a little concerned that the June meeting is going to be like we did the public outreach part, and people are so busy this time of year. I mean, I know the goal was to have more of the summer community, but I think we still haven't fully reached the year-round community yet, and people are working hard right now. So those are just my additional comments from you, Mary. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Other comments from committee members? Right, seeing none. So part of the, well, let me continue on the agenda. To what extent have people on the committee used the IRIS app, or do you have comments about the use of the IRIS app? I know I have sent some feedback to the project team, hoping to make the app a little bit more useful. Peter?
Well, for us, you know, if we have feedback, we're just going to do it at a meeting, because we're going to be talking directly to Vince and directly to you. And if Arcadis is there, they're going to hear us. So it's, to me, it should be the public. We want the public to use the app. We want to hear from them, because we know that they're not going to be at every single meeting, but having the app on their phone is like having a meeting on their phone that never adjourns. They can go ahead and say, you know, I see this happening and we should do that. But then how do you, I agree with everything that Sarah said about outreach, and what you said about outreach, and how we're kind of falling, or we, or Arcadis has fallen down on that. It's too bad. Well, I don't know if we can get it together. We can get a video spot that's going to somehow show on all the screens at the film fest, and going to show at the Dreamland, something that says, hey, this is happening. Here are the links. Here's the app. We want your engagement. This is your island. I don't know what the words would be, but this is going on. The water is coming up. I mean, it's crazy to think that we're not, you know, hitting all the marks for outreach. That people are like, all right. And I kind of agree with Sarah, you know, that the people who engaged with our meeting, our open house before, may not attend the next open house, because we are all busy, and they all might be in their minds that, hey, I did that. I'll check in with them later, and hopefully we do get other people. But you know, it's, I don't know. Maybe it's just, usually it's just the choir that follows along to the very end. And as people get busier and busier in the summer, maybe they're not paying attention as much. And I don't know about the planning for the State of the Harbor Forum that usually happens in July, the Land Council, but maybe we should be a part of that. Maybe Vince should have a segment where he gets up and talks, because we're talking about the health of the harbor. But now that we have 200 people in the room who may not know anything that's going on, this would be a good opportunity to say something. That's it.
Thank you, Peter. Those are a couple of great ideas, and I hope that we will follow up on those. I love the idea of a video playing on the Dreamland screen, or, you know, on social media or the town's YouTube channel. I think that could be very useful. So I'm sorry, Sarah, you had a comment too?
Yeah, I just thought with town meeting coming up, if there's an opportunity, I know we talked about having the flyer out there for the homeowner brochure, but in if not that, is there a way that we could have something about the open house for later in June? I don't know if that's an opportunity, and I know it's short notice, but we could just even have like a save the date. Do you care about the, whatever, it could be really small, but just a reminder so that let people know.
We had talked about handing out the flyer, and that's coming up on the next item in the agenda, but just what you were saying, Sarah, if we could print not just the flyer, but also an insert to go in it to advertise the open house, I think those would go hand in hand. It'd be great to be able to hand them out at town meeting. So let's continue with this subject. Has anybody used the story cards that Arcadis provided in any setting? Vince?
Sorry, Mary, before we continue, can
yeah.
I just make one comment on the last point? About your
Please, yes.
So I hate to be that guy. I just have to make a simple comment, and it is a simple one. The consultants and then later this committee worked on the engagement plan. So forgive the bluntness of this, but I don't know that we have the money or the time left in the budget to go for large scale things like a video for the Dreamland. It's a terrific idea, undoubted, but how would we pay for it? I hate to beat the money drum, but I don't think that's in the budget.
And I think that's a consideration, but one that perhaps we can approach creatively. We'll see. There is a contingency item in the budget. Matt, you have a comment?
Yeah, I may not be as concerned. I think I'm not as concerned maybe about the outreach as some members. And the reason I'm not is I think we're going to hear the outreach once the options start being shared. I think at this point, people understand there's an issue. They don't know when it's going to be or where it's going to be. They kind of know, but they don't. But I think once the options and some of the resiliency starts to be discussed about and gets out there, that's when I think we'll see a lot more engagement. So I'm a little hopeful on that end. I think that's when we'll see the engagement, and some of it's going to be, oh, tell me how this isn't really true, and we're going to have to break through all those things. But I think we're going to see a lot more, and I think that Inquirer Mera has done a good job. They've been publicizing this. I think Remain has. I think there's some things we can do. We'll probably talk about them later. Sort of a line on a building downtown or something. There's awareness that we can do that maybe will be funded someone else may fund it. Maybe it'll come out of Remain or comes out of, someone else. But I think that there's things that could go, could be short dollars, but could go a long way. But I think we'll talk about that later. So I'll hold.
Thank you, Matt. Just a quick thought, Vince, do you remember or have at hand, is there another presentation to the select board coming up from the Coastal Resilience Plan team?
Working on a date with that at the moment. Okay. We're trying to see if it will work in with a presentation on Baxter Road or be distinct and separate for a presentation on Baxter Road. But that will be sometime either July or after. We're working on at least the Baxter Road one for July.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments before we move on to the story cards? Okay, so repeating my previous question, has anybody used the story cards in any application? These were provided from Arcadis in order to solicit public feedback. I took a look at them, and I had a plan in mind. And when I looked at them, I realized that they weren't going to be very useful for what I had in mind. And I sent some feedback to Arcadis about ways that the cards could be made more user-friendly. I believe they updated them. And Vince, can you tell us what the status of those changes? Are those available now in the cards on the website? Are those still in draft waiting to be approved? Or
so Mary, you provided the ideas and the changes, what would you say, maybe 5 weeks ago?
Yeah. And
they went up within a week of that.
Okay, so that those, I couldn't remember if they were waiting for approval, but so those cards have been updated to be a little bit clearer and more user-friendly. I think I had comments about the placement of some of the links and how easy it was to access them.
Yeah. And the fact that one of them was a dead link, which is now fixed.
Yeah. So I just wondered if anybody else had feedback on those cards.
I can share if needs be either the English version or the Spanish version.
Yeah, so can I take the silence as nobody has attempted to use them or been successful in using them? Okay. Vince?
I have an opportunity on Thursday to start to use them.
Okay.
I'm speaking to I think it's the 8th grade civics class Thursday morning.
Right, thank you, Vince. Next item up, reviewing the remaining timeline until delivery of the coastal resilience plan. So we've mentioned the virtual open house number 2, the potential select board presentation. What else do we have between now and September, Vince? And do we need to make any plans to do something for that timeline?
Yes, I'm going to have to work on that answer.
Okay. And then finally, so getting down to the nitty gritty, what can we do as members to help promote the June 24th virtual open house number 2? One of the thoughts I had was, is it worth going out to the dump to hold up a sign or pass out a flyer to, kind of get directly to the public that this event is coming up? Leaving aside the question Vince had about how do we pay for such things for a moment, is it something that we would be willing to do as individuals who are members of the committee? Or even do other people think it's a good idea? Sarah?
I feel like I'm going to be a little hypocritical right now. I think it's a great idea if someone has time, but I do not have time on the weekends right now to devote to it. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah. Vince, a comment?
Sure, if we can figure out paying for it, I'm happy to facilitate getting it done. I've had large-scale posters printed up in the past at local island businesses, and they worked out really well. Sorry, this is probably not the best thing for Zoom, but that size and that type of poster, something I can easily get done, and they're not cheap. They're about $300.
Sarah?
Just in seeing the signage and thinking about that, I would rather spend, my opinion would be to spend $300. I would prefer signage than handing out things that people are probably going to throw away, considering we're about combating coastal or climate change. And I don't know what the rules are about, because this is a town committee, if we can post the signs at the places like the dump and around, or highly visible areas. And then one other suggestion I have was, instead of, in addition to in person, we know, knowing Mary as the administrator of the Facebook page that we all love to hate, the Nantucket Year-Round Community page. I hate to say, a lot of people get their news that way about what's going on in town. And if there's an official post that can be shared from the town, I think that it's great. I think some of that has been done, I think, already.
Yeah, funny you should ask, Sarah. So Vince did post yesterday the
okay.
announcement for the virtual open house number 2 on June 24th. That went through the natural resources page on Facebook. That was also shared by the town on their page. And it was also shared to Nantucket Year-Round Community and a few other places on Facebook. And the town usually will tweet that information out as well for the few people on the island who use Twitter. Vince? You're muted, Vince?
Thank you. Phone is ringing, so I apologize for that. So the town, the CRP website also has the same information, so the links are there so that if anyone wants to share it amongst their member organizations or any organizations that they're within or that kind of thing, you can find it there. Share it as widely as possible. I've already asked a few groups, or many groups, I beg your pardon, to share it on their websites or in their email blasts or in their newsletters or as a direct link to their membership.
And Vince, I just had a thought, and I just lost it. Apologize. It'll come back. Sorry. Other comments or questions? Okay. Anything from the public on help for publicizing the June 24th virtual open house #2? Happy to take suggestions from the public as well. And not seeing any there. So moving on to the next agenda item. So more generally, public educational efforts, other than for the virtual open house. Some ideas, handing out flyers at town meeting that we mentioned, possibly with an insert for the open house. The Nantucket Athenaeum had offered an opportunity to the committee to design an exhibit for coastal resilience education. I had provided some assistance to the Athenaeum several months ago in obtaining a grant for, I believe it was for coastal resilience education. They had a speaker. They are definitely interested in helping to provide education to the public. And so one thought that we had was, could we do a story walk in the Athenaeum garden? At the time, of course, the Athenaeum is not open to the public inside the building, but that would be an opportunity. Again, the question comes down to who it would help to design it, create it, install it. That's always the big question. So bringing that up, and then any other suggestions for public displays. Again, we would need somebody to create, design, install, and coordinate with the organization that would be the host. Just wanted to bring that back to the committee and see what people had available. Jen?
I have a thought, and again, this is on this, who has time to actually put these together, not necessarily volunteering or saying I do, but bouncing off what Claire had presented about the Macy warehouse and the Envision resilience installation presentations that are going to be in place for the kind of the rest of the season. I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to have some kind of, even if it's just similar to, say, the poster size thing that, Vince just displayed, if we have one thing that we can put up that has a link for the app and why you should download it, how do you get involved, here are the websites. I mean, that might be an outlet for something that is an easy one shot of reaching people.
Thanks, Jen. And you gave me my thought back. Vince, I wanted to make sure that Arcadis pushes out through the app and the email blast a notice for the June 24th virtual open house.
Sure thing. Just to add to that a little bit, we've been trying to discuss the strategy for outreach for June 24th, and I think I already mentioned it in an email to the committee, but just public information to say that we're also going to be looking at newspaper advertising. The event is happening on a Thursday, the 24th, so we're looking at week before and day of, I think it's the 17th and 24th for the newspaper, and we're looking at a kind of a longer term and more sustained campaign this time. Beg your pardon, I think there's no one around now. So that's why we're started pretty much a month early with this one. Last time we only had about a 2-week run in. This time we're looking at a 4-week run in and get as much information out as possible.
Right, and I'm very happy to see that we have a month to run up to the event, and I hope that we don't waste it and that we do get some of that public outreach going so that the event has a wide participation. Any further? Oh, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question about what the Athenaeum was proposing. So what was the display that was needed, or what area do they have aside from the story walk idea, but like what was it? Were there tables or something, or?
It's up to us to ask for something. So that they weren't proposing a particular strategy. They were offering their assistance.
Okay.
With whatever we wanted to do, whatever that might be.
Great, thank you.
Matt?
The pictures that speak to me are when I look at the pictures with the sort of flooding on, the Macy building downtown or the flooding down at the steamship. When I see those, that's when viscerally I said, okay, we're going to have to do something here. What are we going to do? And then sometimes there have been towns that have done light installations at night on historic buildings, showing where the level will be on various scenarios. And I don't know where they get those, where you get the laser lights, who does the installation. I have no idea. But that to me on the Macy building downtown would be great, or over on the Whaling Museum, because it's right next to the juice bar and it's packed every night with some sort of, some sort of iPad, some sort of, thing that people can interact with. I think either of those would be game changers. I think that would completely get people to understand what we're dealing with. And I have, I'm not sure who has done that. I've seen pictures of it, but that to me would be amazing.
Jen and then Sarah.
Thanks, Mary. Matt, I agree. I've heard I've been in a lot of discussions where people have talked about doing very similar kinds of things. Like, how do we get installations up in town? I've heard the light one, quite a bit. And I've heard that in conversations, with this group. I've heard it in conversations with Acclimate. I've heard it in other, but no one has actually stepped forward and done it. And so I don't know if the impetus is, getting a point person to do it, if it's the funding source. And so I don't know if maybe the role of CRAC is to say, okay, we have these 1 or 2 ideas that we think are the most useful for promoting awareness, and then going, maybe we go to an organization like Remain that's really concerned about, the downtown and flooding in downtown, and saying, we want to find a way to partner to get this information out. But I feel like we keep having conversations about wanting to do it, but it hasn't advanced past that yet. And I don't know where that push is to make that happen.
Vince, I'm going to ask that you suggest to the project team for the Coastal Resilience Plan that they watch this discussion in advance of our June 8th meeting. And if they have any resources, or if they are able to connect us in any way to help some of these ideas become real, that would be much appreciated.
Agreed. Just also to point out in a slightly separate but related way, Acclimate had discussed doing this as well in the past at a couple of buildings, and they too ran into funding trouble. And they, I don't know the funding sources of that, but my understanding is they're not challenged for finances.
Matt?
Do they know where to, do they know how much it will cost, or where to get the, do they know how much it will cost and who does it? Do they have that information? I think money usually isn't the issue here.
Okay.
It's usually getting it, connecting to the right person to get the job done.
Yeah. I don't know about that. They had looked at 33 Washington Street, the Mariah Mitchell building there on 33, as their potential location to do the light projection onto. And I don't know what, I think that ended up over time progressing and becoming the mural that's now at New Wales Street.
Sarah, you've had your hand up. I apologize for skipping over you.
That's okay. I was gonna say, there was a whole session on this at Keeping History Above Water, it was done in Newport, so it's a really great example of a very similar type of community, historic structures. But I think there were examples for many different areas. I remember Charleston, and Holly probably knows more directly, but I think that's where a lot of us first saw that light specific example. There were chalk drawings. There were like, all virtual. There was VR headsets you could look at. So there's been lots of examples, and I agree. I was going to say a lot of what Jen said, where we've talked about this a lot before. And I think, Acclimate has that history of working with the Artists Association as part of Acclimate. And that's where kind of the mural part came from. And things like a design aesthetic that Remain would really work well with. And that's me saying that from the outside. I think if this is something that we as a committee want to pursue, it's a longer term thing, because obviously there's the buildings themselves have to have buy-in, we have to provide the information, so it's a longer term thing. I think what I thought what our initial conversation was with the Mary was proposing was, how do we get education out in the shorter term for people to come to the June meeting. And I think aside from like some guerrilla artwork with chalk that I don't think would be looked too fondly by our town officials, I think that I really love these ideas. I feel like it has to have some input from the artistic community. I think that would be able to provide something that is visually stimulating in addition to shocking.
Vince, and then Jen.
So this is just working from memory now, and I'm sorry that Rachel Freeman is gone. The Land Bank have been working on the Easy Street, the new pocket park right there. From memory, from the design plans, they had looked at bringing in a sea level rise chart of some description or some method of visually showing it. I wonder, could we tie into that in some way and have CRAC be somewhat involved if they're amenable to that?
I have the same memory of that inclusion. I don't know if it's going to, how it's going to be installed or if it's going to be installed, but I think it's definitely a question to pursue. And since we have an opportunity on Friday, Vince, let's try and remember to bring it up. Jen?
Thank you, Mary. Sarah's point was good as far as thinking, we're talking about things that are maybe longer installations or things that are going to take a little while to get off the ground, especially if we're partnering with other organizations. I wonder if we want to have a future meeting where we're thinking about September with that climate change awareness, and maybe have the goal of some kind of public interaction installation that can happen in town that will also kind of coordinate with when the plan is coming out. Maybe we can invite Acclimate, Remain, Land Bank, other groups that we've all kind of batted around the ideas of putting in an installation. Maybe we can have a portion of a meeting where we invite everyone and say, CRAC wants to have something like this happen. How can we help facilitate it by partnering with any of these organizations? And maybe if it is that longer term goal later in the summer is the kind of endpoint for maybe getting something in place.
Thank you, Jen. Sarah, I want to follow up on your idea about chalk. I think that's brilliant. It costs next to nothing. It's not permanent. It can be done, in a day. I think if we can get a building owner to give us permission to do a chalk drawing, that might be really effective. Peter?
After the no-name storm, put 8 feet of water on Brant Point. The Coast Guard in their dorm building, which is the building right there that faces the dock, went in there with a paintbrush and a can of red paint and painted a line on the wall on the inside that showed how high the water got. I mean, granted, that's federal government. They decided to do that. They didn't have to talk to us, but I mean, Matt's idea of having something on the Whaling Museum that people who are standing in line for a half an hour for a $30 ice cream cone, it's a great idea. We should do that as soon as we can possibly do that, as cheaply as possible. And I agree with Jen, we should have a meeting to flesh out these ideas, but the order of the day should be expediency and not wait till the last minute, because we have a captive audience, probably one of the busiest summers coming at us right now, and everyone's going to be here and people should see that and go, oh, wow. And then there's the kiosk that we might have. And I don't know. We shouldn't just talk about it forever and not do it, is all I'm saying.
Thank you, Peter. I'm thinking right now I'll reach out to the NHA and see what the possibilities are to work with them. Fritz, you have a comment?
I'm just going to comment. The town owns a couple of buildings right there in the same block. How hard is it to get to? How hard would it be to get their permission?
That's an excellent point, Fritz. Vince?
Simple question. Would this have to go through sign committee or HDC?
It depends.
Yeah, I would, on that note, I would definitely say it depends on what you're proposing, because I had the same comment. A lot of this came out of Preservation Institute Nantucket through Kim, actually, with her, Preservation Institute Nantucket when she was a student. And that's where Acclimate obviously came from. And that was one of the topics of how do we present this information. There was ribbons that could be tied. There was the visuals, there was the laser scans, and the of trying to provide this information. And that was something that I mentioned, is if there's gonna be signs, which is fine, it would have to go through the sign committee from the HDC for their purview. So I think I'm kind of on board with ideas that are non-permanent. But I also agree if there's a town-owned structure that we know from the information that's been provided what that level would be, that would make sense as well from a town's perspective.
Yeah, and just from my personal perspective, I'm not real thrilled about the idea of neon lighting or similar, non-historic aspects. They would certainly be attention grabbing, but I'm not sure I would really want to see that, especially in a permanent installation. But I really appreciate the discussion and the feedback. I think some great ideas came out of that, and I hope that either individually or collectively, we will pursue some of those. Peter, a comment?
And just comment on your comment, it wouldn't be a permanent installation. And I know it's a historic structure, and I know that that is not appealing to everybody, but sea level rise is not appealing to me. And I don't think it's appealing to anybody who lives to be affected by it. And I think this is one of those situations where, yes, you do get a laser and paint a line on a building so people see it, and you explain it, and you make them understand that that piece of history right there is going to be underwater, and you should know about it and what people are doing about it.
Thank you, Peter. Fritz?
I don't know how sophisticated you need to get with lasers. I mean, contractors use laser level lights every day to hang sheetrock and other types of things. So it might not need to be that sophisticated if it could be somehow just figure out how to project it and how to identify what it is. You could certainly have a red line across the building pretty easily.
Thank you, Fritz. Sarah?
Yeah, just to go back to what Pete said about this being such an, we know it's going to be a big summer, right? Every industry knows that. So I think if we can have a meeting where we talk about it sooner rather than later, I would be happy to participate. And I feel like my brain is filling with ideas right now. What we can do that's very simple, and like the chalk idea and like a QR code somewhere where somebody gets more information or can also have input, anyway, I think that it would be great to do something sooner rather than later, and I would be happy to make time for that.
Thank you, Sarah.
I said that on a recording, so I have to stick to it now.
So this is where the story cards might be useful if they're paired with some sort of artistic installation, so that that they have a QR code on them, they have a website reference on them, they prompt people to interact. But just sitting by themselves, they don't convey enough about what we're trying to achieve. But I think perhaps combined with some kind of visual installation, they could be a very useful tool to collect the interactions. All right, further comments on general public educational efforts before we move on. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. That can be for anything that we have talked about or anything that a member of the public wants to bring to our attention. Yes, Andrew Feza.
Okay. First of all, I have to apologize about my connection. We have very, very spotty internet on Sheep Pond Road, so I hope you can all hear me. I didn't get a chance to respond earlier, but just to comment on some of the comments that were made at the time. I've lived on Sheep Pond Road for 20 years. I've, lived through many storms, the road eroding at many points. And it has always been approached as short-term fixes. The road is kind of been built up on NCF property, always adjacent to the homes and their properties, which has created kind of like a zigzag configuration, always heading back to the beach, which is why every couple of years it needs to be addressed again. I think some of the comments that were made about approaching it from as a long-term plan is very, very important. It's always been approached in the past. I mean, there are two obvious connections, one from Sheep Pond Road, one from Red Barn Road. These would all be, I think, very good long-term solutions if it's configured properly, if it's looked at as a long-term solution and not a short-term fix. The challenges with the approach from Red Barn, which to me is kind of like the most obvious solution is that it goes through not only NCF property, but it also goes through land bank property. I hope that that could still be taken as a viable consideration by the town. And I know it's more difficult when you've got 3 players involved in making this decision, as it would be if it's just the foundation and the town. But I think it's a consideration that should be, kept on the table. There's a spot that's a straight shot from Red Barn right into Sheep Pond Road that would really be an excellent long-term access. There was, I think, a walking path that was established there at one point. The other solution from Sheep Pond Road through NCF property is also a very good one, as long as it's not in a low-lying flood zone. I think that could be very viable also. In terms of the comments that were made about consideration for a parking area, I think that that's a good idea, and it should be considered as well. It should be away, as far away as possible from the shoreline. When we have had a parking area in the past, it's really it's been abused, and it's accelerated the erosion. Cars would we had a small parking area there a few years ago. They could fit maybe 3 or 4 cars. At any given day in the summertime, it turned into 12 or 15 cars. They were parking up on the bank, and I think that they've just helped to accelerate the erosion. In terms of the long-term solutions, those are my comments. In terms of the short-term temporary access, I realize it's through private property. And again, I know it's short-term. It is a real challenge, and I hope that the town could go back to it and address it again. And I know it's on private property, and it's a touchy situation, but it is probably impossible for an emergency vehicle to make the turn from Head of Plains onto Sheep Pond Road. And that's just an observation. And there's the maintenance issue. Head of Plains is not being maintained properly. It's close to impossible to drive on. I appreciate the fact that the Head of Plains residents have opened it up to us. But at the same time, I think that the town has a responsibility that they did not necessarily follow through with 100%. I'd like to see that looked at again, hopefully through signage or possible collaboration for maintenance, so that it doesn't become a disaster in the summertime.
Thank you, Mr. Fezza. Those comments are, I think, helpful to us as a committee to understand, what it's like to live in one of these situations. I want to make sure that you're aware that we are not a direct conduit for your comments to reach the people who, okay.
I realize.
Yeah, if Vince can probably help you connect with whoever you might need to connect with if you do need to pass something on.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for coming today and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Further comments from the public? Right, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes. First, for the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee minutes from April 27th. Vince, if you can put those up on the screen.
Okay, can everyone see these?
I can see them.
Okay. So I don't think there was, the only thing I added was a link to the recording, unless any other committee members had anything else.
Any comments or questions? Sarah?
I didn't have any real content. There were just a few small typos, so I can just send you those after because it doesn't change the content and we don't need to spend time on it. But.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else? Is there no other? Yes, Matt?
I'm not going to vote. I wasn't there, so.
Okay. So that leaves us with 5, so we can still approve the minutes, right, Vince? Okay. So I'll take a motion to approve the minutes with the opportunity for spell check to be invoked.
So moved.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jen. So roll call vote, Sarah Boyce,
Approve.
Peter Brace,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
Fritz McClure,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Those are approved. We also have a set of minutes from our former education subcommittee. The minutes of the last meeting of the subcommittee need to be approved by, in a regular committee meeting, since they didn't have a subsequent meeting. And Vince, I think Sarah and I are the only members of that subcommittee present. So are we the only ones voting on the approval?
Correct. I checked with admin to find out how it was, and just a quorum of the original committee that the minutes are from. So just you and Sarah, basically, you're
Okay.
correct.
Sarah, if you are the chair of that committee, so if you wanted to take the lead here, you're welcome to.
So I didn't find any changes, if I could remember, all the way back to September of 2020, but are there any other changes that need to be made to the minutes?
I had no comments.
All right, so hearing none, it's silly for us to make a motion if there's only two of us.
Well, I'll make a motion and to approve the minutes, and you can second it, and then you can do the roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Mary Longacre.
Aye.
Sarah Boyce. Aye. The motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you both very much. It fixes a problem for me.
Committee reports. So any reports from members of the committee from the groups which they represent? Not anticipating any. Moving on to new business. So discussion of upcoming meeting dates and topics. So we are scheduled to meet twice in June, the 8th and the 22nd. There is the question of, since we might have two meetings on that week of June 22nd, one for the Baxter Road Plan and one for the Coastal Resilience Plan, do we want to meet on the 22nd? And then the further question of, do we believe that one meeting during the summer months would be adequate? Or Vince, if you can weigh in, or perhaps Trevor can weigh in on June 8th. If they need us to meet, we certainly would continue to. But any other comments on that question would be welcome.
Thank you very much, Mary. So very simply, the June 8th one I think is important, and Trevor's already asked to appear at that one, so that's kind of very necessary. The June 22nd, that I think would be necessary as well, as preparation for the CRP Virtual Open House 2, which is 2 days later. So I would recommend that at least a brief meeting. I think there will be enough to talk about there. They want to vet some of the content through this committee and make sure that everyone understands it and would be able to discuss it if needs be outside of the event, or explain it in a group meeting or that kind of thing. So I think at least a short meeting or a short part of a meeting where this could be discussed would be important.
Great, thank you, Vince. I wasn't aware of that, so I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify one other point. It's a very small point. So the first two groups would be, sorry, this is for Baxter Road. The first two groups, for want of a better description, the SBPF side and the NCC Land Council side, will be meeting with the project team that week. We haven't yet found a meeting date for 10 staff, Select Board and CRAC to have their second meeting, but we're trying to work it out within a week after that. And that's something I'd have to run through this committee first as well.
Okay, thank you, Vince. So we will plan to meet the 8th and the 22nd. Any comments from committee members about one or two meetings in July or August? I don't know if anybody has a vacation scheduled yet. Peter?
Yeah. Well, it's been 2 years since I've seen my sister and her family, so I'm going to be in Maine from the July 26th to August 6th.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So this is not a final decision. We expect to have a new member in July. I wanted to defer any decisions about the scheduling until they were able to participate. Jen, you had a comment?
I was just going to say, Mary, that I know the summer is a busy time. I think if we can get away with one meeting a month in those 2 months at least, that would be great. But I also agree with what you said about Arcadis. And if they need feedback and help from us, then that's what we're here for. So I don't know if it's a schedule, one meeting a month with an alternative second date if it's necessary to get more information, but that's just my feedback.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. We're all going to be very busy. And we don't know if these are going back to in-person meetings either or staying on Zoom. So that's another factor perhaps for some people. So any further thoughts? Again, it's not a final decision today, just raising the topic. Okay, then just our standard list of reminders on the agenda for the meeting recordings. We will continue to add to those resources. And if anybody has suggestions for resources we should add to that list, I'm happy to include those. If there's nothing else, though, we can take a motion to adjourn. I'll say Fritz and Sarah seconded. So roll call vote. Sarah Boyce?
Aye.
Peter Brace? Peter?
I said aye.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. Matt Fee?
The deepest
Aye.
voice.
Jen Carberg?
Aye.
And Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. We'll see you all June 8th.
Ben, did Ian ever join us?
I didn't see Ian.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, Ian did not attend today. And if nobody minds, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay. Thank you.